Hi, everybody, and welcome to our continuing work, sorry, with glamour, a world problem, glamour, our problem. Uh, and I just want to, glad to see you all here, and I want to uh, pay my respects to our team here, Michael, Joe, and BL, all of them keeping me on the straight and narrow, which is oftentimes quite necessary. And I want to welcome Martha from Denmark. Hi, Martha. Nice to see you. And Veronica from Greece, and Anne from LA, and Annette from, it's got to be New Zealand, and Astra. Oh gosh, you just told me where you were. I think it's in the UK. But anyway, glad to see you, Astra. And Beastie, uh, Oshinbulu. BC, maybe send me your email address if you'd be so kind, and I can connect a couple of things with you. Carl from Pittsburgh, hi, and Catherine from from Australia, hi, Catherine, and Eva Medici. I'm not sure about your location, so Eva, maybe you could send me what your location is. Francois from Canada, welcome, Francois, and Georgina is here. Again, I'm not sure of your location, but if you want to send that to me, that'd be great. Heike from Germany, welcome, Heike, and Joan Schofield. Again, I'm not sure of your location. If you want to send me a note to infinitize8@gmail.com, then I can know that, and that will come in handy. Karen from Portland, hi, Karen, and Leslie from Phoenix. Hi, and Martine Dupont. Well, I know it's French. I'm just so sorry that I keep on forgetting the location. And Mayra Santos, I'd like your email address, Mayra, if you can send it to me. And Nesa also, the same. Hi, Nesa. And Nienke Rutterdink, maybe it's Holland or Belgium or somewhere in there. Just remind me of that. Olivia from Phoenix, and from also the Colorado area. Hi, Olivia. And Risto here, Finland. And Tia from Washington, welcome. And Vivienne, please send me your email address if you'd be so kind. Vivian. And Zenaidi, I think from Switzerland, I think. Anyway, great to see you here, and thank you for attending. Tuya and I have been so busy trying to keep abreast of these of this crisis situation in Afghanistan, which is so much against the people who were involved for 20 years of nation building. And they hoped for much better, but the barbarism has taken over, temporarily anyway, and it's very dangerous for them, and so we've been trying to add our support for their well-being and for their relocation to other countries where they can be accepted more as human beings instead of this is a man, this is a woman, It's just horrible, the treatment of women and girls, and we try to keep up with that. We'll maybe offer it not every night pretty soon, but a couple of times a week, and hope for the best. We have problems all over the world, and the great glamour of hatred is what we've been working on. Now, above all else, DK tries to stem the tide of this glamour of hatred and separativeness, the one great heresy, as he calls it. And if, for instance, right now you want to show your screen, you're perfectly welcome to do that, as we have our reading and then we have our meditation. So basically, this is our program number 184, and we've been at it a long time, and Olivia, Tuya, and I kind of got this thing going quite a while ago, and it's very necessary. This is reading 121, and we're on page 198, and I just need to remind everybody that, well, maybe you don't need reminding, that tomorrow, at least, the 11th, whenever that is the 20th anniversary of the attack on the World Trade Center. There's still a lot that's murky there, but it stands as a great example, said one of those who know, of jihad, that kind of religious war coming to America. Well, America is not the only target, and in general, the Western democracies are the target because they allow a degree of hierarchical freedom, which the ancient ideas, or at least medieval ideas, of the certain group, inspired by a literal interpretation of Muhammad's words, they no longer are able to interpret this in a way that's anything but literal. And that, of course, is a great affront to the modern mentality that tries to respond to the love-wisdom energy of hierarchy. The love-wisdom has nothing to do with what they are attempting. This group of militants who use barbarous methods to enforce an entirely masculine domination of society. It's just dead wrong, certainly in my view, dead wrong, and it's anti-hierarchical. And the great glamour of hatred is involved in their methods. And a colleague in Australia said recently, well, the cat's out of the bag. The people have witnessed over a 20-year period what democracy can be, even though there was a lot of corruption, as we know, and they are not going to settle to be dominated by this barbarous masculine attitude, which really is filled with hatred for the balancing group, the women and the girls, and anything that has to do with real health and real education. I saw a picture the other day, and it's Sharia all over again. And in some kind of class, there's a curtain between the men on one side and the women on the other side. Now that kind of separateness cannot be allowed to abide, and we attempt in our way, when we get together every couple of weeks at least, and when you do your own glamour meditations about your own glamour, we try to do something of value that will end this separatistic tendency. We'll be getting together again on September 24th, looks like, and looks like it's at this time that we would be doing it, 5 o'clock GMT. And, we can only wonder what September 11th will bring, because it's important for people of a certain persuasion to commemorate their victory, as they call it. And there can be a lot of violence tomorrow. So let's work against that. Let's work for the love and harmony instead of hatred and violence. The day will come when we really know how to deal with glamour. It is somewhat for the future, and we are a kind of seed group effort along those lines. But the seed can be powerful and can germinate and can offer new and effective methods within the new group of world servers. That's what we're striving to do. So and some others have joined us, and welcome to you, I will say. Now, let's continue our reading a little bit, and then we'll go into our meditation on the glamour of hatred, the ancient glamour of hatred, based on the great heresy of separateness, the greatest mistake that the human thinking mind can generate. We might call it the greatest illusion. Hatred, an astral condition based upon the illusion of separateness. All right, so what does DK say? DK's last words here before reality will issue forth triumphant. What does he say? Over the fogs and mists of earth. Because in these mists, in these fogs, all men stumble. We cannot see where we're going. All right. It is interesting to note, he says, that the most ancient prayer in the world, may I say, think of that for a moment, the most ancient prayer in the world refers to the three aspects of glamour. And it is for these that the three techniques must be used to make release and progress possible. Now, maybe let me add, he's talking about illusion, glamour, and Maya, specializing them. As far as the three roots that are glamour inducing: suspicion, self-pity, and criticism. So let every would-be disciple evaluate himself or herself on the basis of those three inducers of glamour: suspicion, self-pity, criticism. And this ancient prayer is from the Brihadarayaki Upanishad, and well, the technicalities are there. It's one of those that we use and have used all the time, perhaps not realizing the ancientness of it. I mean, if he says it's the oldest prayer in the world, it's got to date back to even Lemurian times. And who knows where else in the solar system it has been used. So, you know, we're not dealing with any small matter here. Let's see, I'm just hoping that everybody has been transposed into the main room. Okay. And that you can see what this ancient prayer is. It's simply a reminder to all of us: lead us, O Lord, from darkness to light, from the unreal to the real, from death to immortality. And in a way, I think we see there the first three initiations. The greater light in general of the first initiation, which is a probationary initiation. The reality which has to replace the unreality for the second initiation, when we really start to overcome glamour, and finally entering into the third degree, which begins to have the influence of the deathless monad, the heart and soul of the monad, the very center of the monad, is immortal. It is pure being itself, and we begin to experience that immortality at the third degree. Is it not looking like a very simple prayer? But if you stop to think about where we stand, you know, and how vulnerable we are to all of these problems, we see that it's probably as relevant today as it was when it was created. By whom? O Lord. The Lord, I guess, must be the inner God, whether we want to call it soul, triad, or monad. Now he's going to take up each of them in order. And so let's see what he says. lead us from darkness to light refers to the mind. So immediately the third aspect of divinity, right? Refers to the mind as it becomes eventually illumined by the light of the intuition. We might say first by the light of the soul, and then later by the light of the Buddhic plane, which has conferred some of its intuitive power into what we normally call the egoic lotus, or the causal body, or the soul. But from the Buddhic plane comes this light. This illumination, he says, is brought about by the means of the technique of the presence, from whom, and note the capital W, from whom the light shines. So this is a very high source, and it is the place where the human monads, called the initiates, actually take up residence, and their work. It's a plane ruled by Scorpio, and the hierarchical ruler is Mercury, a planet of great light, probably with a fifth ray, third ray monad. I always give 2 rays for the monad because one of the rays has to do with the monad on the monadic plane, and the other, still higher, has to do with the liberated monad. So the technique of the presence, which has to do with the higher factors within us, and it helps to dispel illusion. It is not so much the focus upon the glamour activity, but it can be brought into relation with the sphere of glamour and guided by the soul. So, we have to ask ourselves whether we practice this technique of the presence. What, after all, may I say, does the presence mean to us? When we think of the presence, of what are we thinking? And ultimately, I would say we have to think of pure being and of what we really are. We are that presence, and at some point we have to awaken to that fact. So this is interesting because it's connected with Transfiguration in an important way. So he says, this is the mediating factor, producing the transfiguration of the personality and a center of light upon the mental plane. Well, we're all headed for transfiguration. It may not be immediate. As a matter of fact, almost certainly for any of us, it's not immediate. What is more likely is to be solidly established in the second initiation, which some of DK students were experiencing for that particular life, others for lives on ahead. But this transfiguration of the personality goes along with the third initiation. And a radiant light upon the mental plane caused by the higher points of tension, which have now begun to empower the triad, the soul, and to make their way into the personality. Now, what does he say here? This statement is true whether one is speaking of an individual or of that focal point of light which is formed by the mental unity and the clear thinking of advanced humanity. So more and more in the Aryan root race, people are acquiring the mental focus. They may not yet be mentally polarized because that is a state which comes after the second initiation and after passing the temptations in the desert, albeit, of course, on a much lower level than the Christ was able to demonstrate before humanity, when he sort of stopped the devil, the rebellious personality, in its tracks with statements like, man does not live by bread alone, but by the very word that comes out of the mouth of God, and get thee behind me, Satan, and thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. DK remarks about the Christ's mastery demonstrated for all of humanity as he confronted the personality elemental after 40 days of fasting. Now that's probably literal, and we can also think of it as somewhat symbolic. Okay, DK goes on and says, these, through the power of their unified minds, will succeed. The thinking, soul-inspired thinkers will succeed in ridding the world of some aspects of the great illusion. So a thinking humanity is already a step in the right direction. Now, we have an awful lot of people that are simply emotionally polarized. You saw that on January 6th with the attempted, I don't think very many people realize how serious it was, the attempted insurrection, the attempted overthrow of democratic due process of law. And now, is it the 18th or the 19th? There's some kind of rally intended to defend those who were the attackers. So these forces are certainly not quelled by any means. And the battle will go on, certainly until the great conclave of 2025. And who knows, we still have time, almost a century, before the official beginning of the Aquarian age, considered astronomically as the year 2025. 1:17. Okay, so more light. I am the light of the world, says the Christ, says Hermes Trismegistus, and we have to learn, too, how to identify as light. Then comes this one that has more to do with glamour and with the astral plane. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Has special relation to the astral plane and its all-encompassing glamours. All-encompassing. Every place we go on the astral plane, we are subject to glamour. Even the very higher subplanes of the astral plane, though in a better condition than the lower ones, are also subject to certain of the higher glamours. When do we finally be rid of glamour? Well, there is cosmic glamour, there is systemic glamour, there is planetary glamour. Whatever restricts access to the next phase of reality has to be considered as glamorous. So this has some philosophy in it, you know. What is the unreal? What is the real? Sorry. And how are we led to the real, away from our confinement in glamour? DK goes on to say, these glamours embody the unreal and present them to the prisoners of the astral plane, leading them to mistake them for reality. Well, I think we have only to see what's going on in the United States, for instance, as a harshly divided country, to see who are the prisoners of the astral plane. The attackers, the insurrectionists, the refusers, the people, the conspiratorial thinkers, filled with suspicion, refusing to think of others when it comes to this pandemic and the possibility of vaccination, which greatly lowers hospitalization and death rates. All of these people, I guess simply because they were incarnated later in the game, are prisoners of the astral plane. And they do think that they are dealing with reality in their conspiracy theories, which sometimes are so outlandish, your jaw has to drop to think that other people are really thinking in that way and acting upon it in with their desires in the field of glamour. DK goes on, this imprisonment by glamour can be ended by the activity of the technique of light, which is, may I say, that's what we usually use in the meditation that we use. the imprisonment by glamour. Now, I wonder if we can, for a moment, ponder on what this imprisonment in by glamour really feels like. Because I want to say that so many of our glamours and the glamours that are sweeping through many millions are self-justifying glamours. This is how I've always been. This is the right way. There is proof to how I feel about these things. I saw some of the pictures, the photos of the attackers on January 6th, and the body language itself was filled with possession by glamour. I saw a man, he held out his hands like this, and he was moving towards attacking a Capitol police officer. I wondered what possessed him. Well, it was imprisonment by glamour. So if we work properly with the technique of light, and we do some of that work, and it will become more intense as the Aquarian age moves on, can be ended by the activity of the technique of light, utilized by those who work in group formation. He's always specific about the value there of the group work, by those who work in group formation for the dissipation of glamour and the emergence in the consciousness of men of a clear conception of the recognition of the nature of reality. Well, that means that we quasi-esoteric workers, I can never say that we're entirely esoteric workers, we're just not there yet, but okay, we quasi-esoteric workers have our work cut out for us along approved esoteric lines, helping people understand what is the difference between their imprisonment in glamour and a recognition of reality. Lead us from the unreal to the real. Remember again how ancient is this prayer. He calls it the oldest prayer in the world. Sometimes maybe he calls the Gayatri the same, but they are both of ancient origin. This particular work of dissipation is our immediate theme, and it should interest us because it's our immediate method. It is of vital importance to those who recognize the open door to the future through which all men must pass should begin to carry forward this work. Only thus can humanity be helped to leave behind the errors, the glamours, and the failures of the past. Okay. So it's of immediate relevance to us. Let's see if I can get this correct. Well, if you press one wrong button, you're finished. But there it is. It is our immediate theme of vital importance, and we can't go forward without it, really. So our proficiency in executing this technique and of spreading it wisely among those who can handle it is really esoterically important. DK goes on to say, it is this technique which brings freedom from glamour and which can transform human living and so bring in a new civilization and culture. Now think of that. That's how powerful this technique can be, this technique of light, which has to do with that aspect of glamour, which is most urgently oppressive. That's the question. Can we deal with the pressure of the time? Because the pressure of the time demands the use of this technique. Well, the promise is very great. A new civilization and a new culture. It's being held back by those who are prisoners of glamour. Sometimes we read about the prisoners of the planet, and those can be elemental lives, but in so many ways, unthinking, desirous humanity is a great prisoner, excluded from the understanding of reality. Now, what about this dissipation? Gosh, I'll be limited as to what I can do here today. There's lots to be done, lots to be read anyway. I think he stays with the dissipation of glamour for quite a while and does not exactly get into the dispersion of Maya according to the technique of indifference. The real trouble is when we are under the spell of a glamour or more, we don't recognize it. That's why it was so valuable for those students of decay to receive from him personal, considered, well-considered instruction. It was important because he could pinpoint, he could isolate, he could name and rename and give new names too, exactly the glamours which were confining his chelas. Well, that day will come for all of us, because as he says here, we're all going to go forward, and we will all leave behind the errors, the glamours, and the failures of the past. As far as failure goes, as far as sin goes, he says, all have sinned, all have failed. And on top of it, for the poor aspirant, the glamour of the fear of failure is one of the main restrictions upon that aspirant. How many of us fear failure? I certainly know I do. There's so much to be done correctly, and I think, well, what if I don't do it correctly? What if I fall back? Those kinds of things. What if, given all this opportunity, I can't respond properly and fail? So it can itself be quite an inhibition. All right, a little more. This dissipation, remember, dispelling is the word we use for illusion, dissipation for glamour, and devitalization or dispersion for Maya. This dissipation can be carried forward by disciples in all parts of the planet, aided by the world aspirants. Maybe I will say they're not quite so steady, not quite so rooted in what are the best methods and what they must do. They are more inconsistent. Anyway, disciples can do this. World aspirants can aid. It will, however, he says, be primarily the work of those whose ray focus makes astral living the line of least resistance, and who have learnt or are learning to dominate it by the power of thought and of mental light. So I want to emphasize, and it's coming up, how important is the sixth ray in this work. Matter of fact, everybody who was involved in the glamour group was equipped with the sixth ray. Even the first ray soul, who had a fifth ray personality and a fifth ray mind and a seventh ray physical body, it was that sixth ray astral body which equipped him to be able to work with the glamour group, the observers of reality. And obviously, if you think about it, this would have been the group itself that really had to be careful about being vulnerable to glamour. They were very close to it. And when you work there, you can understand the need for the protective formulas. Okay, maybe just a little more. So these, he says, dominated by the power of thought and mental light. Well, this particular man, was it DLR? He was entomologist, a real scientist. In this life, he was studying insects of all things, but I think he played the violin, and I think he had in his higher rays much more of the mystical and especially scientific rays. It was obviously something that had to be done in that particular life. But he was the great steadying force in that group, and we can understand that it would have been needed. Okay, these are the sixth ray people in the first instance, aided by aspirants and disciples upon the second and fourth rays. So it looks like the sixth ray types have a kind of vulnerability to glamour, and that people who think more broadly are in a position to help them. Okay, well, I do believe we should stop the reading now, but just to say a little bit, he says that in time and space, this task will be first of all instituted and controlled in group formation, only by aspirants whose soul or personality rays are the sixth, or by those whose astral body are conditioned by the sixth ray. And then there will be help coming to them. So I think that will be enough. And if you have, we're on page 199, and I'll go back here and just say that 197, 198, and this takes us from, well, I'll just go down here and change the numbers. The sixth ray is in a very long cycle right now, and there's a huge fourth ray cycle of some 40 or 44,000 years, in which the sixth ray sub-cycle has 21,000 years left to run, so it operates on various levels. So it's not as if the sixth ray is suddenly going to disappear, nor should it. So this was 184, the end. and it was reading 121. We'll meet on the 24th of September, a couple of weeks, and we'll be working on Glamour 185 and continuing along this line, reading 122. And the next time we'll be on page 198, not 198, but 199, and it will be the 24th of September. And it will be at the 5 o'clock time, as usual. And if it is difficult for you to handle that time, well, on Makara, these programs will be posted. BL post them, and also Joe and Harold see to it that they are posted on our usual esoteric Moria Federation esoteric education, our usual YouTube channel. So you'll be able to pick them up, read thoughtfully, and see where you fit in all this. You know, the glamour of having no glamours is sometimes present in people who feel they are quite far advanced and of a mental focus and not in need of dealing with glamour so much. Well, that in itself is unreality. We still have them. And not only do we have them, but if we start looking at this in a planetary, solar, and cosmic sense, these greater entities, relative to their position on the cosmic scale of evolution, they have glamours too. And the cosmic astral plane may be the seat of a great love energy, but it is also the seat of certain inimical forces, which are glamorous in the cosmic sense. So the whole thing is about learning what reality is and going step by step to clear away the obstructions to a greater registration of reality. Well, we don't know what reality is. I mean, the next step in reality, we may have words for it, but when we experience it, then we'll say, aha, well, so that's what he meant. And we will climb into a greater perspective of the soul, of the triad, and finally of the monad, and finally of the liberated monad itself in the sea of fire. Such a huge destiny lies before us. I guess DK calls it monadic destiny, that will strip away the many obstructions to greater and greater light, love, and power. All that remains waiting for us. But we have to begin somewhere. And we are beginning studying what this particular seed group, the observers of reality, had to study when they worked with DK. And when he externalizes, and he'll be one of the externalizing masters, we may have the opportunity to work with him directly and in person, which he says will allow much greater and faster progress because the teacher will be there to guide and to guard. Okay, so are there any things you would want to question or say or write or whatever before we get into our meditation? And then later tonight we will have the continuing vigil for the coming of democracy as a hierarchical expression, not only in Afghanistan and some of those countries ruled by a very strict and primitive Sharia law, but all through humanity. Things are very uneven in terms of respect for democracy. And we have to make it more understandable and available. So that will start at 7:19 or 7:20. And for the moment, I have to be the broadcaster of that on the usual YouTube channel. There are just complications where Tuya is at the moment, which do not make it possible for her to broadcast that particular program. Okay, anything from you that you would like to say or discuss?
Michael?
Yeah.
Bishy Ocean Bola, I'm so sorry. I didn't
Yeah.
probably even come close. He says he's from London, or he's in London.
Okay.
Remember earlier you were asking?
I was indeed. And I thank you for that. If I'm going to get in touch with some of you, which I sometimes need to do, then I need your email address, and that will help me. As a matter of fact, let me just try to do something quick here. And maybe it's not going to be so quick, huh? That's my problem often. Okay. Maybe I can do this thing called quick access. It doesn't exactly give me what I want, but it's pretty close. I don't want to take time unnecessarily. But so here, well, I'll tell you what, BL, write down, if you would, BC's email address. Okay.
I'll send you the
yeah.
I'll send you the chat file, which will have it in it.
All right, that's great. Okay. I don't want to take anybody's time here. I appreciate that because sometimes some of you like to have a program in which there has been, what do we call it, what do we call it? Something like, well, the words that I'm trying to speak. Of course, there's lots of errors, but it does seem to help some people. Okay, thank you, BL. I appreciate that. And thank you, BC. Okay, what else? Is there anything?
That's all I see, and I don't see any hands.
Wow.
Oh, there we go. And
I say,
Veronica. And
you say
Veronica.
yeah, I'm sorry. Everybody understood everything. That's fantastic.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Except Aunt Veronica. No, she says,
Okay.
please can we talk about the line of least resistance? Half of the time I feel it is the road that must be taken and the other half to be avoided. Also, he seems not to leave any probability to work with dissipation if you do not have the sixth ray.
Well, I would say about the sixth ray that it seems to tune you in to that particular area that is has to be addressed. So that's a question of resonance, okay? And I cannot say unequivocally that no one who does not have the sixth ray can work in the field, but it seems to be a resonant factor. And the next time we talk, I think he's going to talk about why it is so necessary to be equipped with the sixth ray. Now, so many of us really have it, and if we don't have it as a present ray, we might have a very strong, what I call, legacy ray from an earlier incarnation, and probably one that is quite recent, even the previous one. So if our specialty, I mean, we can't be in every seed group doing specialized work in every seed group, and if our specialty is as an observer of reality, then it is probable that the sixth ray would be very helpful in that. I mean, I just, and thank you, by the way, whoever put in DLR, the entomologist, Charles Hill. He had so much of the hardline rays, so many of them, 1, 5, 5, and also 7. But that sixth ray thing attuned him. And further, when you read his application, he seems a much softer character on the higher levels along the second ray line than you might suspect with such a profession as the study of insects, of all things. Sorry. So that's a case where some kind of karma or some kind of balancing had to take place. Okay, the line of least resistance. Sometimes it is a pejorative, like the tendencies of the third ray to cut corners and not really be square, to eliminate things that should be retained because they are expedient. But I think you're correct that there are other times when we don't want to be barking up the wrong tree, as it were. We want to do those things in terms of the seed group work, which really are suited to our ray capacities. and also our astrological capacities. And in that regard, the line of least resistance can take on a positive meaning involving resonance and attunement. And you just have to make the judgment as to which one of those he may be talking about. I can give you an example from my own life. My parents always wanted me to be a doctor, a physical doctor. Well, I went to school for a while doing that with chemistry and organic chemistry and physics and all the rest, and that was not the line of least resistance, nor could anything of moment be established because of my own ray combination and astrological combination. It would have been utterly futile, although I do number among a lot of my best friends psychiatrists. That's the kind of thing I was interested in. But there were other ways to get there. And so I followed music and literature and drama and those things which were attuned to my rays, and I was able to make progress because I followed the resonance. So we have to make a judgment about whether the line of least resistance means cutting corners and not doing what you're supposed to do because you're too lazy or, too oriented towards expediency, that you won't take the time to really do what you should do. There's that type of line of least resistance where you basically fall back. You're interested in the personality, and you're not yet solidly anchored in the soul, and so you fall back into what is easier, what takes less effort or least effort. And you just have to make the judgment yourself as to what he is talking about, because both seem to be true. Okay. What else?
Okay, you've been talking a lot about the seed groups, and so I just wanted to put a plug in for David Hopper is starting his new series tomorrow on the 10 seed service groups. And I put the link in there where you can go to the page that describes it there on our Moira Federation website, and it will, you can register to join if you'd like to.
That's great. Okay, that's
Okay,
great.
so that'll be tomorrow at 7 p.m. GMT. And then Mary says, in earlier days of my life, used to be so devotional, race 6, and I felt so much blessed in its fervor. Then disillusionment led me towards science in the 5th ray and systemic
pragmatism.
Yeah, that's it. The 3rd ray. It's been difficult for me to reignite that faith without skepticism, especially when facing the glamour in spiritual seekers, aspirants, and disciples. How to keep my heart and mind focused?
Well, that's a big question. And if you think about the solar angel, it's very much a center of heart and mind, or let's call it the angel of the presence, as much of the solar angel as we can really contain within our causal body. So there, the Tibetan might recommend to study the position of Venus in your chart as representing the union of heart and mind. People, this is not uncommon. I saw it when I was teaching opera and stuff like that, I had a friend, kind of a friend anyway, who was an organic chemist. And you know what that might require. Well, suddenly he turned into a religious devotee. What happened? And oftentimes there are different ways for this to happen. A legacy ray from the past can be pushing you in a certain direction, and suddenly a ray that is part of your present equipment and is quite different from the legacy ray begins to take over. Or if it's not a legacy ray, it can be your own ray that inclines you in a certain direction, like the sixth ray, but a still higher, more soul-related ray begins to come into power and competes with the lower ray. So now what we have to do is understand that Venus shows that there can be both love and mind united. And so he tells disciples to study the position of Venus, its house position, its sign position, and in generally its effect in the horoscope, and maybe the way to unite, because they must be united, the heart and mind will begin to dawn upon one. Yes, one can be skeptical, but if one really follows decay carefully, beyond skepticism is a higher type of science, which is known to the solar angel, or angel of the presence. And if one begins to slide into that higher form of science, then mysticism, devotionalism, love, all that becomes far more acceptable. I remember back when I was teaching in a state university, I had a friend who was, he was Scorpio guy and a wonderful man and totally scientific. And then, wham, the change came because something higher in his nature struck and reduced the effect of his skepticism, okay? And then I was taking some courses because I just had to do some counseling psychology. And the fellow who was teaching them was totally in the concrete mind. And I talked to my friend about it and says, yeah, it's a phase, and later you'll be able to come back to include the heart. So never give up on that. The skepticism relates to a lower phase of mind. The higher phase of mind will definitely have room for both love and mind. And that's the way I would approach it. And I would do quite an earnest study on the higher meaning of Venus in general and what it could mean in my astrological chart. I would also make very sure that I knew what my rays were and could justify that. See, all of this is based on actually knowing your ray chart and also the rays that come through your various astrological factors. So there's no problem eventually once we overcome the small skepticism. And that small skepticism means we are transcending the limitations of the illusory lower mind. Okay, anything else?
No, I don't see any hands and I don't see any more comments.
Okay, well, please do. Oh, and wait, it looks like there's something here about this is a political statement, and is it from Livy? Or I'm not sure.
It must have come to you directly because I don't see it.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, the politics is rife with glamour right now, just the way religion is. And these two areas are very dangerous in terms of selfishness taking over. So I know how politically active Livy is and how helpful she is in that field. So somehow, in both of those cases, we have the third ray, the sixth ray, and also the first ray. And we have to learn how to use them in the right way that is not separative. Okay, friends, well, thank you for your comments. And we'll have our meditation now. And as I said, for reasons that are largely related to equipment and other things we can't overcome at the moment, I'll have to be the one that will give this vigil for tonight. Last night we talked quite a bit, my night anyway, about women and girls, and the themes are what they are. We know what the themes are. Will the hatred incorporated in medieval masculinity overcome the opportunity that should be offered to half of, at least half, of world's humanity, namely the opposite sex or whatever is the opposite, to the women, to the girls who are having their opportunities seized, taken from them by a brutal force which I believe cannot and will not last, because at some point it's going to overstep its bounds and call for some reaction that will replace its hatred with inclusiveness. Every master or every high initiate is responsible for what he's done. And there have been great initiates who have misstepped along certain lines, and they have to come back and correct the karma they have laid in their wake. I believe Jesus was one, Moria another, and certainly Muhammad another. Okay. Now I just have to find.
Yeah, I was going to say we don't see your meditation yet.
I'll tell you what, you can see my medication. It's piled up on the dining room table. But meditation is another matter. Okay, so got to, yeah, this is going to be it. There it is. okay, I think so, right, Bill? Looks like it.
Yes, we've got it. Thank you.
Okay, so you know what we're meditating on. I've sustained this because some of you, you saw Star Wars and very advanced film for its time, or that whole series, and how the evil emperor tried to get Luke Skywalker to hate. He tried to cultivate hatred in him, and he was happy when he thought he saw signs of this hatred growing. Well, but DK has referred to this as the great glamour of hatred, and we have to do everything we can to not allow it to flourish. So we won't name all of us right now, but we'll be aware of each other wherever we happen to be. And in the silence, our sense of unity will grow. So we really are one unified group, spread geographically, of course, but in esotericism, that's not the main thing. And not only will we discover ourselves to be one consciousness, but also one being. And this is dangerous work, no question. Some of us have experienced the dangers. They are subtle. And it's the major focus of world illusion, looking at illusion in the larger sense. So we use our protective formula, and we use the cross with the two eyes, tracing light as we go. And as we do that, the greater cross also appears protectively before the group. So DK calls this the cross of the sign of the cross of divinity. As the soul, I work in light. And darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. So we work from the light, and we do not go out in the sense of leaving the light. Now we focus the light, which will give us the beam that we will use for detecting glamour and dissipating glamour. So first we focus the dual light of matter and mind. The vital light of matter rises to the mental plane, and on the mental plane we can think, we can reason, we can use the light of mind. And we also call down into this fusion of the two lesser lights on the mental plane. We call down the light of the soul. And bring its influence into the double fusion, making it a triple fusion. So on the plane of mind, a soul, a vitalized soul, illumined mind is what we can begin to work with. And we say, regarding this triple light, which is one light, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So now we have the triple light, which we can project as a beam into the world of glamour and confinement in unreality. regarding the formula, we're going to visualize that great searchlight, which we have created, and we'll be turning that light upon the astral plane. Radiance are we, and power. We stand forever with our hands outstretched, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning, and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And we invoke the spiritual will to strengthen our beam. Our beam both detects the glamour and dissipates it. And so we say, as an affirmation, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. Now, we name the glamour and utter the words of power. This is the great glamour of hatred. Many are the excuses people give to assert this glamour, but you cannot really hide the motive. Hatred, separatism, and so we say, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of hatred. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of hatred from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind the glamour. And we visualize the light penetrating into the glamour and producing its weakening and dissipation. Now, we can do this in the 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose whilst the work is seen proceeding. So 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose. And so we begin to withdraw our beam. It has done some work to discover, to dissipate the clouds, miasmas, the fogs of hatred. The sun of love remains. And the beam is abstracted back to the mental plane and to its threefold origin. And we sound the Om 3 times as if in the light of the sun. Which breaks us out of the prison of the glamour, especially this glamour right now, so dangerous. The same motivation that is driving the barbarism in Afghanistan is not much different from the motivation which drives the selfishness in the United States and in other countries. We sound the Om 3 times, affirming the belief that some work of value has been done, especially on the astral plane, but affecting also the mind and the etheric physical. Oh. It's long, slow work over years. And considering the Aquarian age, over centuries before humanity learns to stand with massed intent and rid itself of the imprisoning glamours. Tonight we will have our broadcast. Rather than a Zoom cast, and we'll continue with a problem that is focused in Afghanistan, but which can easily occur in other countries, and which basically pits the angel of the presence against the rebellious personality. I think tomorrow we may have the climate change. We'll see how we can manage it. And on Sunday, for those of you who are members of the Esoteric United Nations, we have intended now to pick up that program which we could not offer before that time. Thank you for your attendance. All of us on the communications team wish you lots of love and many blessings and absorption of Master DK's important ideas and application of them the best you can. And when I say that we'll have a broadcast for the vigil, it's on the same Moria Education, Moria Federation Esoteric Education channel. So it's our usual educational channel and not not Zoom for tonight. Okay, we'll bid you farewell for the moment and see some of you before long, as a matter of fact, quite soon. Quite soon. Okay. 10:20, 7:20 GMT, 10:20 our time. Bye for now.